Okay, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to talk about, I'm going to sail through the first few slides that I've got here, but I wanted to talk about something that I've been involved with on my summer holidays this year. I'll set the scene a little bit in terms of what's happening with ecstasy in the UK, and then say something about drug testing, and then what we did this summer. And I say we because there's at least 5 people in the audience, I think, who were involved with what we're up to this summer, which was to pilot a front-of-house drug testing project in 2 festivals, Secret Garden Party and Kendal Calling. So to scoot through the first few then, what's the problem, what's the situation? The problem being that we've got illegal drugs, all psychoactive drugs now, all in inverted commas, are illegal to sell. So we have an unregulated market. The consequence of that is we have variable purity, variable contents, potential adulterants. Therefore, the effects are going to be unknown for users, potential overdose, potential deaths. So that's the situation, what we're going to do about it at the moment. The government sort of health education campaign by Frank was about the crazy chemist, so a recognition that we have this situation that we don't know what's in the drugs that are being sold. So one of the responses has been to this illegal drug market, the idea of drug testing. And drug testing, pill checking, front of house testing, all sorts of different terms for that, but the defining features tend to be that you're trying to determine what the pharmacological content is of the drugs that are being sold, and in some way share the results. And it might be that they're shared to agencies on site, it might be that they're shared to users as well. And the overall aim is to improve public health and safety. So one of the things that might vary is the extent to which users are involved in that information sharing, which is something that I was interested in. So we have variations, but quite a lot of countries are offering some sort of drug testing, and increasingly, across Europe, Switzerland and Australia, you'll see in the news in the past few days, and also this summer, England as well. So why might we want to do it in terms of public health and safety? There's an argument that when people are in touch with drug services that have had forensic testing involved, that they're more likely to engage with harm reduction messages, and that they're more likely to engage full stop. And we could argue that this is a hidden population, if you like, in terms of the fact that they are not in touch with services or likely not to be in touch with services. And if they're involved in recreational drug use in festivals and clubs, then they're likely to be earlier on in their drug-taking careers. It also gives us a chance to monitor the market, to look at drug trends, and there's a debate about the extent to which it may or may not reduce or increase drug use. There's some evidence from Europe that, contrary to the criticisms that it might increase or encourage drug use, that actually it reduces initiation because of this idea that people hear about some of the horrible things that are circulating on site, and also demystifies illegal drugs by drawing attention to adulterants and things like that. So there's all sorts of reasons why we might be thinking about drug testing generally, but I'd argue also specifically in the UK, and I don't want to teach you all to suck eggs here, because I'm aware of, as the previous speaker said, of what a drug-experienced audience, that sounds wrong, you know what I mean. So, scooting through these, we know that we have relatively high prevalence of drug use, including of ecstasy, and it's been relatively stable over the past 20 years amongst adults generally. A bit of fluctuation amongst young adults, but basically over the past 20 years, we've had a situation of stable ecstasy use. But although use has been stable, the market hasn't been. So we've seen a reduction in purity around about 2008, 9, 10, due to disruption of the market. And that reduction in purity has been for heroin, for cocaine and for ecstasy. And then since then, we've had an increase in purity of those 3 drugs, which has caused all sorts of problems. Not least, we've seen a 5 times increase in the strength of MDMA in pills, and an associated 5 times increase in the drug-related deaths from ecstasy. Although it's sort of intriguing that that isn't recognised in the latest ONS report. They say it isn't related to increased pill strength. So I'm not sure why they would say that. But anyway, we know that there's been a 5 times increase in deaths in the last 5 years and a 5 times increase in pill strength. And this is average pill strength, now being 125 milligrams of MDMA. So an average pill is the sort of dose that an experienced adult male might be taking. But looking sort of a bit deeper into the the average of the MDMA content, what we know is there's enormous variations. So pills are no longer round and white. They often don't have score lines. They're all sorts of shapes and sizes, as all of you will be familiar with. I've got some of those pictures there. The bottom right is some of the pills that we tested this summer for the loop. The important thing, though, is that aside from the variations in shapes, colours, brands, is the variation in strength. And at just one festival this summer, we tested pills which range in strength by a factor of 10, so from about 20 milligrams right up to about 250 milligrams. So you can see the concerns for users who have no idea what's in those. But we were interested not just in pill checking, but also in powder checking as well, if you like, because of the growing number of MPS that are circulating. And not just circulating in terms of users wanting to take those drugs, also circulating in terms of seeping into the illegal market. So people are buying white powders that they don't necessarily know what's in them. So that's sort of the scoot through the current situation with the drug market in the UK, and why I think there are particular concerns at the moment, compared to, say, when I started doing research 25 years ago on ecstasy, when it was literally round white tablets of about 100, 120 milligrams of MDMA. So is front-of-house testing ethical? Well, we did get university and police ethical approval for what we were doing, but there's an argument that actually, and this relates to wider harm reduction, I think, really, that not only is it ethical to be doing it, but that it's unethical not to be trying to be doing it. And that's something that I definitely took on board, and I'll say a little bit about that in a moment. Bearing in mind that drugs are for the foreseeable future illegal, but users are for the foreseeable future going to carry on taking them, we still have that conundrum, that problem, and therefore I'd say that if we can, we should be doing it. Is it legal? One of the reasons I was interested in pushing this forward is I was testing behind the scenes at the Warehouse Project for the past 3 years, and developing good relations and thinking this was possible, increasingly possible, but people were saying to me, no, it wasn't, because it wasn't legal. So I regularly take legal advice from a barrister who some of you will know, Rudy Forston, who's been very gracious and very with his free time for me. Although he does warn me that he doesn't want to ever see me at the other side of the bars and giving me advice in prison. But assuming that Rudy is right, and I believe him, I've been taking careful advice in relation to the legality. So in terms of what happens, the sort of mechanics of it, people will give us a very small scoop of powder, half a pill or a pill, negotiating. Interestingly, at the Secret Garden Party, people happily gave a whole pill. At Kendal Calling, the Northern Festival, they were bartering about half a pill or even a quarter of a pill. No stereotypes there then. So people take a very small, we take a very small amount of the drugs off people. They will post in a little bag in an amnesty bin. They'll get a unique ID number, go away for half an hour, come back. We would have conducted forensic tests. I say we, 3 of the forensic testers are here in the audience, so any techie questions you can ask them. And then we would do the tests, and most of the drugs would be destroyed in the testing process, so we wouldn't be technically in possession of the drugs, and any that survived will be collected at the end of the day by the police. But probably the most legally sensitive area is actually for what happened front of house. So when they got the results, people would get the results from a trained, experienced drugs worker as part of a harm reduction package, a sort of 15, 20-minute individually tailored harm reduction package. And 2 of the people who did that are here in the audience as well, who can answer questions. And that's probably the most legally sensitive because they mustn't be inciting people to commit a crime. So they have to be very careful in terms of how they word it with what people intend to do if they go away and take the drugs. So they had a script at the beginning that they pretty much stuck to because of that legal sensitivity around that. But I should say that we had not just the full support of the police. The police have been absolutely side by side and encouraging this, supporting this. They couldn't be more supportive, which is perhaps a surprise in terms of people's perceptions, but I think it raises really interesting issues in terms of what's happening locally compared with what's happening nationally with police forces, and that's something that I'll say something a bit more about in a minute. So 3 years ago, we were doing this back-of-house testing, and what we've done is basically roll out our sort of back-of-house, now portable lab more and more. So we're currently using FTIR spectroscopy reagent testing and extraction. As I say, which other people can answer more questions from than me, but we're also hoping to roll out later UV spectroscopy this autumn time. HPLC hopefully next summer, and also in conjunction with Liverpool University we're hoping to develop bespoke portable GCMS. So we're hoping to improve the technology, but we're very mindful of the limitations of what we're currently offering in terms of the analytic methods. What we did then, we went to a secret garden party in Kendal Calling, and we offered testing to people who wanted to come along. We didn't advertise it beforehand because we had no idea how many people would turn up. These were very much pilot schemes. We had about 250 samples submitted at Secret Garden Party and about 50 at Kendal Calling. Probably reflects the fact that Kendal Calling is a family festival and it tends to have lower levels of drug use anyway. What was interesting though was probably people came in groups of 2, 3, 4, 5. So each of these harm reduction packages and each of these samples we tested related to small friendship groups. So we think we probably were in touch with about 1,000 people directly at the festivals. Which means that was about 1 in every 50 festival goers we directly had some sort of harm reduction engagement with. So we were pleased with that because there was no, as I say, there's no advertising at all. In terms of the outcomes then, 18% of the people that, when we told them what was in the drugs, they said, would we dispose of the substances that they had in their possession, that they didn't want to take anymore. That was probably not least because a considerable amount of utter rubbish was circulating on site, and I think there's something about festivals that you have chancers who aren't necessarily day-to-day dealers, but they think they can probably palm off rubbish on people and get lost in the crowds. So you don't have that accountability that you might have of people's day-to-day dealers. So we tested boric acid that was being missold as cocaine. We tested malaria tablets that were ground up and missold as cocaine. And 100% pure concrete had been made into ecstasy pills and were sold on site. So we could put out alerts about that sort of blatant mis-selling by dealers. And the police were very pleased about that, obviously, because we were identifying this mis-selling. And also they were pleased that 1 in 5 people were asking us to dispose of their drugs because they didn't even want to take them. In terms of other examples of sensible and, I think, productive engagement, is the fact that we had quite a lot of people come and see us on the Sunday. We were packing up and ready to go, and we thought that Sunday would be a very light day, that most people would be finished all the drugs, or they'd just be drinking, or they'd be getting ready to go home. And in fact, Sunday was pretty busy. And the reason for that, interestingly, was people were coming to us on Sunday because they'd had very negative experiences on Saturday night, and they wanted to find out what was in the drugs that they had taken. So I've been saying, when journalists have been saying to me, oh yes, this is condoning drug use, saying, well actually no, users weren't necessarily doing it before they were taking the drugs. This was actually after the fact, because they wanted to learn themselves about what was in the drugs. So that was heartening for us really in terms of sensible engagement. And the other thing was, aside from the adulterants, we identified very, very high purity pills, which some of you might have seen that we sent out Twitter alerts in relation to that. So we could say to people on site, please be careful, there are pills that are 250 milligrams on site, and hopefully then dosage would be appropriately adjusted. So media response was very positive, even in the Daily Mail, leaving aside Peter Hitchens, but we'd be worried if he was positive. So I've got there 2 examples from the right-wing press. So it's been very positive. I probably won't have time really to go through all of these concerns and limitations, but one of the things from an academic point of view is how to evaluate the relationship between giving out information and behaviour change. So we need to go away and look at the results in relation to that. We also need to we are constantly rolling out and improving the analytical methods, and I've got a great team of volunteer chemists who are helping with that, who are brilliant. But we have to bear in mind that however good the technology is, we have batch inconsistencies. I teach in prison, and one of my students in prison, he got 15 years for ecstasy, having being involved in ecstasy supply, but he was caught with 2 cement mixers in his front room, and he was mixing up the MDMA and pressing the pills out himself from Liverpool, and he, no judgments, when you think about that, and issues about testing one pill, I'm very mindful about managing expectations in relation to that. It's quite obvious that there's going to be massive variations if you've got people mixing them in the front room with a cement mixer. We're also mindful of the issues about focusing on drugs as the problem and adulterants as the problem, as opposed to thinking about dosage, thinking about drug set and setting, and users also taking responsibility themselves, so it's not just a focus on the markets. So we've had Twitter alerts. We don't call them warnings. We'd like to say we're not advertising for the dealers, although that could be a criticism. I would respond to that by saying one of the things users said to us, service users came to us when they found out the results of the drugs, if they thought they were utter rubbish. A few of them said, I'm going to go back and have a word with my dealer now. So we've got an interesting feedback loop, which could be positive, actually, which we haven't had before. I'll end with this in terms of the wider issues. You might have seen yesterday that Simon Bray, ACMD member and Metropolitan Police Commander, said he saw that there might be some usefulness to recreational drug testing, which is probably the most positive national comment we've had so far. The Home Office have said all drugs are illegal because they're dangerous and therefore there shouldn't be testing because people shouldn't be taking them in the first place. But I think at local level, what's really interesting is the support we've had from the police. So not just Cambridgeshire with Secret Garden Party, not just Cumbria Police in relation to Kendal Calling, but actually I've been contacted by at least 10 festivals for next summer, and Operation Gothic, which is the festival, all festival police forces have a sort of end of the summer conference to assess and appraise what happened in the summer. At their conference, they had a secret ballot of whether they supported our front of house drug testing, and 80% of officers there did. So we're feeling very positive moving forward in relation to that. I think, though, there's this interesting, I'll end on this point, I think there's a really interesting tension between localism and nationalism, and the three other examples I'll give about that in relation to drugs are, in Durham, where I'm based, Checkpoint currently has a diversion away from the criminal justice system, randomised controlled trial in operation that people might not be aware of. Bristol now has a drug education project, and they are funneling people into drug awareness courses, and away from the criminal justice system for all possession offences in Bristol at the moment. And then finally, you've seen the discussions in Glasgow about drug consumption rooms. So I think there's really interesting harm reduction initiatives happening at local level, despite what the Home Office might be saying.